Well, I first came to Manchester, I think it was in '91, just as things were probably getting a bit dodgy at the Hacienda, I imagine, and I didn't go, obviously, because I'm the kind of person that misses everything. Missed all the bands I love, I haven't seen. And then in '93 I came up and did for a weekend I did something called The Search for Bez, which was an exhibition. I was in an exhibition at a space, and I came up to Manchester for 2 days to find Bez, because the Mondays had split up. I think it's '93 or '94. Mondays had split up, and you hadn't heard from him for a year. And I wanted to see if I could find him, because I was actually quite worried about him.
This is an artwork or a personal...
Well, it's a personal thing. I mean, without getting too emotional about it, but that band meant so much to me, and really just given me such brilliant times, just listening to their music and thinking about them and watching them, that for them just to disappear, I was actually quite sad about it. And so I went up with a video camera and I paced around. The first thing I went to was the library, to the tourist information, and asked them, which was obviously a bit of a joke. And I went to the factory records, went to record shops, asked some people in Piccadilly Gardens when it was like a really big sort of turfed area, really, wasn't it? From what I remember.
Yeah.
And then ended up at a pub called the Woodstock Tavern. Do you know that pub?
On Baltimore Road?
Well, I presume, yeah. I can't remember.
Sean Ryder used to be there.
Well, that's why I ended up there. But
I'm kind of thinking, why didn't he phone me? Do you know what I mean?
This was some time ago.
There wouldn't have been any art then, though, would there?
No, it wouldn't have been the failure it was. But it was, and then.
So did you find Sean in the Woodstock?
No, I saw Liam Gallagher there, weirdly enough. And I filmed him for about a second, but I got scared. This was just before they became big. They were just about to do a gig at the Hacienda, which probably was like, the beginning of whatever. And so I did that, made a film of it. My nieces and nephew did a drawing of Manchester. I just showed them a map of Manchester. They did this childlike drawing, got a dummy and dressed him up like Bez, like you'd see in some sort of provincial museum, and just had this installation with all his enemies around that people could get nostalgic about about 2 years beforehand. And so I never met him. But I met him about 3 years afterwards and told him. He was actually in Ibiza when I went up to try and find him, apparently. So he was fine. All that worrying was actually no point. It should have been, So I knew Manchester. It existed in my mind before it existed as a real place, because of the music, and as it does all throughout the world, I'm sure. And I've compared Manchester in interviews to Memphis, because we all have an idea of Memphis in the US, and we all know it as this music town and so on, and I think that there's big similarities. So anyway, going back, and then in '97 I worked in Stockport with a brass band, and that was just such a brilliant experience, a kind of life-changing experience, really, working with this brass band, because they were so keen to play acid house music, and they just wanted to do it, and I had such a laugh with them, and it taught me that you could really work with the public in a way that I never thought was possible. And maybe and people were just up for doing stuff. And it might be something to do with this part of the world as well, that people were up for doing stuff. In London, there might be a bit more resistance. So I just realised it was a great place. I knew it was a great place, and then I came up here, and it was brilliant. And the first day I went to see the band perform in their rehearsal room. We went to the pub afterwards, and I stood next to Carl Denver, who'd made a Lazy-itis with the Mondays. He was a tiny little guy. Obviously a total alcoholic, But so that was quite special, kind of small way for me. And so then I've just been, I've been back and forth. So to do something here was naturally something you can't turn it down, really. I walked through this town on a Saturday recently, and you go through the pedestrianised bit near the Arndale, and there's just everything is happening there. There's a one-man band, there's Christian preachers, the Gurkhas are out, there's all this stuff going on. And it was just amazing. And then you see some people stealing bicycles and riding off on bikes. I mean, it's just all there. And then you end up at Cathedral Gardens, and you've got all of the emos and the goths. There are those groups like the emos and the car enthusiasts.
Slightly more marginalised.
Marginalised. But actually, they're called these antisocial groups. But they're not. They're very, I've said this so many times. It's kind of boring for you to hear, I'm afraid. But they're actually very social groups. They are new kinds of communities, really. And and they're great to see. It's great to hang around Cathedral Gardens. You go to a cafe that you've loved for years, and then it disappears. But what goes on inside is priceless. just going there and meeting people, and it's like, like you say, a community centre. That's why Valerie's is up there, because if you go there, it's like a community centre for OAPs, more or less, on the right day. It's just obviously a really buzzing, vibrant place. You know, it's the equivalent of a nightclub, but for people in their 70s. So that's why that's there, because it's such a kind of scene happening there. And I like scenes, basically. I like the goths and emos, that's a scene. The car people is a scene. And so it's just, yeah, it's just the value of it, what you lose when those buildings go is just incalculable, really. If you go upstairs and look in the exhibition, you see what we've tried to do is, I think we have 5 screens with processions, and you see them starting as very formal, and they kind of, in the 60s and 70s, they just break down and become these kind of much more chaotic, much more to do with popular culture and jokiness and politically incorrect, very politically incorrect, a lot of them, but they may become a lot more free-form, but also more, in a way, strangely more corporate and less about organisations and sort of order.
I have to say, I actually heckled the Happy Mondays.
Really?
Float, yeah.
That's good.
Like, you're rubbish.
They were
and they were like,
rubbish.
all looked at me, and they were like, oh, Dave Haslam. I was like, you're rubbish, get off.
Well,
and
I suppose you're asking for trouble when you get asked for a group of people who are Happy Mondays fans to get to one place at a certain time on a certain day. You know, it's probably you're asking for trouble. It really is like getting it's like ask for disorganised people to organise themselves. So we're lucky to get 6, I think. I think it was 6. But it was, yes, you're right, it was pretty pathetic. But maybe that was a good thing, I don't know.